What perfectly true story of yours sounds like an outrageous lie? My mom told me my aunt starved herself to death due to dementia and was eaten by her dog, and that this is why we would have no funeral. Not much was left. I show up at Thanksgiving a few months later, and guess who is there? My aunt. Alive, of course. A Thanksgiving miracle, you say? Powerful necromancy? No. My mom lied because she had power of attorney over my aunt, stole her money, and didn't want me to contact her about it, so she told me she was dead. My aunt did have dementia, but had moments of lucidity. Also, during COVID my grandma was pronounced dead by the nursing home, early COVID days, and when the funeral home came to get her they found she was still alive. She woke up, was real angry for like 2 weeks, then actually died of COVID. In the mid to late 90s there was a horrific accident at a Levi Jane factory where a denim hook got caught on an employee's face and ripped a large chunk of it off. This would be a young lawyer's first major injury and employment case, to which him and his client, face ripped off guy, won an absolutely massive settlement. This young man would use the money made off this settlement to fund putting his sperm and his wife's egg in a freezer for 3 years. Put that in another woman, and boom. They had a baby. That baby is me. I always get to tell people I was conceived in 1997, but born in 2000. The lawyer was my dad, lol. I was mugged in Vienna, but it just so happened that on that day in that park there was an undercover police sting targeting this group of muggers. The police watched this guy mug me, non-violent, and then he was arrested, and I was asked to go to the police station to identify him and sign a statement. I went and there was tons of waiting around, and eventually I told them I had to go to catch my boat to Bratislava. They told me I would never make it on foot, so they offered me a ride. So along with my backpack I was put in the back of a police van. The officer driving decided to go for a thrill ride, like chasing down murderer. Sirens on. Swerving wildly down narrow winding streets. People jumping onto the footpath as we flew by. It was her mission to get me there on time. She even drove down the rampway leading to the boat. She opened the back and sent me on my way. There was about 100 pairs of eyes on me, as it seems like I was being deported. I stood at the back sheepishly, and about 30 minutes in an Australian guy walked up and said, "So what did you do?" I fell off my grandfather's ship at age 8 and tried shouting at my family to get me back as they moved away. They didn't hear me, and I was left there floating in water and crying until a tourist ship came by. I was so lucky I had good enough English to talk to them at that age. My first time going to jail was because of a dog. A friend had a dog that got loose one day and it got picked up by the city. When we got in the car to look for the dog, my friend didn't grab anything. No wallet. When we went to the pound to pick up dog, they required an ID, so I had to put the dog in my name. My friend was supposed to get rabies and city registration done within 6 months. Almost a year later, I'm coming home from work around 1:30 AM and get pulled over for speeding. Cop says I have a warrant for not getting dog registered with the city. Spent the night in jail. Not my personal experience, because I'm boring. But I had a former friend who had a one-night stand with a very attractive guy, and when she went to her family reunion, she saw him there and found out they were related. A celebrity performer and painter used to visit my parents when I was 6. I used to sit on his lap and there was nothing suspicious to report. During one of his commercial presentations, he did a short segment on if a grown-up touches you in a funny way, tell another grown-up you can trust. In 2014, he was jailed for historic child sex offenses he committed during the same period of time that he was friends with my parents. After this, I recalled a lot of pedophile activity that my parents were involved in at the time that person was around. You think you know people. My work-study boss in 1993 asked what I was going to do with my extra college scholarship money. I told her I was going to buy a bunch of beer and have a party. She told me about this company Delcorp. If I had some extra money, I should do down to the EDJ office, set up an account, and invest the money in some Dell stock. I took her advice. Didn't have the party. Plus I duped my parents out of more money and invested that too. My boss quit her job a semester later and I forgot about my stock for 4 years. Graduated from undergrad. Moved to a bigger city. Got a job like normal kids do. Got a letter from EDJ that I needed to call them. Called them back from my work phone and just about fell out of my chair. Told my boss that I had an emergency and needed to be out the next day. Drove back to the town I went to school in. Met face to face with the manager of the EDJ office to go over everything. After a year of reinvesting, I tracked down my old boss and paid off her son's student loans. Paid off my parents' house and bought them a new vehicle. Bought my sister a small house. In primary school we had panties checks to make sure we were wearing either navy or black underwear. The house I lived in was raided by a SWAT team because there was a murderer hiding in the basement. I fell 30-ish feet from a tree onto pavement. I landed on my back. No injuries. I was about 13. Just scared the crap out of my parents. When I was a kid, my parents let me pick the lottery numbers one time. I got 4 out of 6 right. And they won like $50 for it. So they bought me a Super Nintendo game. My dog once actually ate my homework the morning it was due. The girl who bullied me in summer camp when I was a kid was my midwife. When I was pregnant years later, she was very nice and professional. Shot through the penis with a BB gun. I once had to replace a Joint Communications Unit sergeant in 2020 who got shot while on the side of a mountain in Afghanistan. They pulled me from an intel unit. I was providing local comm support along with my supervisor and our captain. Spent 2 weeks in a small camp with a ranger unit and a couple air control guys. I was on night watch with my captain, and about 4 days in we start taking fire from this shepherd, who we saw moving sheep every morning at 4 AM like clockwork. I took a bullet just above my chest plate and the only thing that saved my life was my radio that I moved off my shoulder so I could better brace my rifle. It hit the receiver and moved left into my shoulder instead of the side of my neck. I'm agnostic, but that's the closest I've ever come to believing in God. My ex-girlfriend mom was a cop that arrested me before I met her daughter. Threw a plug at an outlet and it stuck in it. Didn't go all the way in, but the prongs were in and holding it up. My school had a fight club. I don't remember who initiated what originally, as it's been 2 decades. But the mostly rather well-off kids and one of the groups of kids of Asian descent got into a massive brawl at the carnival in town one year. Someone disrespected someone else's girlfriend or something. The fighting continues for a couple weeks. Mostly little one-on-one skirmishes. Until it suddenly stops. Except the same kids are still showing up to class with black eyes and the like. Turns out, the school and police were threatening tougher action with actual consequences, so the two groups hashed out a place to meet on weekends and just fight. There is still a ton of tension between the groups, and even shared classes could get a little heated due to this. During this time, a guy named Stan raped one of my friends, who mostly hung out with the well-off kids. Stan is part of the well-off kids group as well, and plays the special sport, where the entire town seems to think winning the state championship is more important than anything else. Seriously, the cops busted a party that year with a tons of drug and such, which resulted in the basketball team losing their season. One of the basketball players had a full scholarship to a major D1 school until it got stripped because of this incident. But the special sport players weren't even acknowledged by the police. The cops literally would not talk to them while the bust was happening. It was insane. As you probably guessed, reporting the rape to the police and school came to nothing but slut-shaming the victim. A group of a dozen or so kids even organized reporting it to both the police and school daily, but that got shut down when the police started to threaten legal action against the people reporting the incident, submitting false criminal reports or something like that. This in turn got reported to the local paper, but nothing actually got published. The rape happened over the weekend. and all the reporting and such happened during the school week. Come the following weekend, when it's Stan's turn to participate in the fight club, both groups jump and kick the ever-living shit out of him. And it's bad. Bad enough that he missed school for about a month. Still came back looking like shit. And 10 years later, when I saw him in a grocery store parking lot, he still had the same severe limp he had for the rest of high school. Turns out, someone who was friends with people in both groups involved in the fight club got a group from both sides together to make sure Stan didn't do it again. My kindergarten teacher slid tourists in our classroom hoping students would find her. We did. She lived and returned to finish out the school year a few months later. I played a serial killer on Hawaii 5-0. I'm not an actor or serial killer so far. I was cleaning the gutter on a double-story roof. I slipped off, did a sort or ragdoll backflip, and landed perfectly on my feet. One reason a lot of veterans don't talk about it, if they have been to war, is because the stories are so bizarre at times. People think you're full of crap and making up stories. A friend of mine told me about how he went to KFC and they ran out of chicken. The churches around the corner was flooded, and the guy in the back was like, did KFC run out of chicken again? Like this happens on some sort of regular basis. When I was in college I had a roommate who had been my friend since high school. He talked in his sleep and was a generally odd dude, but a good egg, so we kept him around for the laughs, with him, not at him. One night I had a dream where he and I were climbing around on all these piles of garbage looking for something, I don't know what. I woke up and went to the restroom, then came back. Just as I laid down to go back to sleep, this guy rolls over and mumbles in his sleep, "I found it. It's over here." The next morning I asked if he remembered his dream. He said no. I told him what happened. He didn't believe me. I met Flavor Flav at a bowling alley in Chesterfield, Michigan. When I was a young adult, there was this girl I liked. Her best friend liked me. They hung out together all the time, and it was hard to get them apart. I'd often have to do something with both of them to do anything with them. The girl I liked told me I should at least go on a date with her best friend, so that it would clear the air before I went out with her. I took the best friend on a date. It went nowhere, and then took the girl I liked out, and it went well. Then all of a sudden, less than a week later, they both decide they don't want to date guys anymore, and start dating each other. It felt really good on my young ego to help them figure that out. In preparation for a high school concert, some students pushed too hard on the grand piano on an easy to move tripod dolly and sent it careening over the edge of the stage, crashing into the orchestra pit below. Professional accountant, side hustle professional dominatrix. I have a friend who believe I'm defying all laws of probabilities. For the record, I have won a coin flip game on the side. I threw the coin in the air, it landed back on the ground, spun for a few seconds, and stood perfectly still. I also beat my friend at rock paper scissors 47 times in a row. When we were playing randomly, people say that there is strategies, but I don't believe in that. I don't remember the maths for all that, but my friend told me it was almost impossible. Edit, so the chances are something along the lines of 1 out of 1. 4 asterisk 10 carat 14. I wasn't happy with my job. I took a trip to the Czech Republic with my wife for a conference she was presenting in. Talked with her advisor about it, and he let me know about a cool project that was being spearheaded by the university. So I applied. That was 10 years ago. Since then I've put one spacecraft in space, about to put a second one up, and have had an asteroid named after me for my work on the first project. To cap it off, a girl I dated in college just got selected to become an astronaut, and with the right timing, could get to ride on the spacecraft I just finished my work on. One time, I ran to catch the bus. When I got on, everyone clapped for me. Not that outrageous. But this 5th grade teacher I had got me in trouble for reading a horror book, Carrie, if ya wanna know. And I got called to the principal's office. All for reading a horror book in the 5th grade. The first girl I ever kissed went on to murder a tramp. Didn't happen to me, but my granddad. Him and a buddy went on a helicopter trip to the Grand Canyon from British Columbia. On the way back they were landing in what they thought was some airport or strip in Nevada to refuel. Turns out it was Area 51, and they were held in confinement and interrogated for like 10 to 12 hours. Had their digital cameras and phones confiscated and eventually mailed back. Then were sent on their merry way back home after it was clear they just made an absolute bonehead mistake. I met Oscar the Grouch from Sesame Street. Not my story, but one from a friend I grew up with. He was born in a third world country, and his trouble started at a young age. One day he had trouble urinating, so the stupid backward doctors over there thought the solution was a circumcision, and performed it on the kid without anesthesia. He then made several attempts to flee the country with his mom, where they were running through the jungles and shot at many times. They eventually made it to the open waters, and spent 2 harrowing weeks adrift on the ocean, before being rescued as their ship was sinking. He lived in 2 refugee camps for some time, before coming to the US. He got beat up a lot over here throughout his childhood. He grew up in a bad neighborhood, and I still remember him being chased one day as a gang of other kids were trying to bash his head in with rocks. Imagine an 8-year-old carrying a knife to school. He eventually ran away from home at 14, joined some gang, got shot, had a lot of wild times, and ended up incarcerated until his 20s. He got out, made a fortune in what I don't exactly know, and lost about $500,000 gambling in the options and futures market. He took up mountain climbing to cure the ailments in his head, and had a lot of adventures and close calls. The biggest one was being stuck on the side of mountain as a large storm came in, and being zapped by lightning twice, on the same day, in the same spot. The guy looks like your average, unassuming nerd that fits in at Comic-Con convention, more than someone who used to literally shoot his rivals with AK-47s, or got into riots in while incarcerated. Now he works somewhere in corporate America, daydreaming of ways to cure his boring life. One time I went to a LAN party back in the early 2000s. I had just gotten my license, so I hadn't been many places, and I had only been to the host's house one time prior to this, and it had been a year. It was in one of those neighborhoods where all the houses look alike. So my friend who invited me tells me there's not many people coming. But when I show up there are cars in the driveway and all up the street. I'm introverted, so I immediately feel the diarrhea pooling in my stomach. I shake off the feeling and grab my backpack and wrap my arms around my heavy ass court TV. I get up to the door and I see the door is open. Just the storm door is preventing me from getting inside. And there's a note that says Esabierto or something to that effect. I look inside and see no one. But there's like birthday stuff everywhere. Plates, hats, kids' toys, etc. The host is Hispanic and last year it was his little brother's birthday party, so the big kids went downstairs for the LAN party to be out of the way. So I'm like, oh, it must be his birthday again. So I knock. A little kid probably 5 or so comes up to the door and stares at me. I go, "Hey buddy, it's host home," and he points at the empty room then runs away. I'm like, cool, thanks. So I struggle to get the door open with the TV in my arms. Don't even untie my shoes, just kick them off, because I'm holding a TV, and make my way to the basement. As I'm going down the stairs I notice there's carpet on them now, and they curve the opposite direction than I remember. I think, maybe they finished the basement and I can hear people downstairs. I'm like, oh great. We are combining the two parties. Last year little bro was sad he couldn't play downstairs too. So I get to the bottom of the steps and I look over a sea of people. There's adults standing around, people with food, kids running around, Mexican hat dances playing, and I'm squinting trying to see between the people hoping to see one of my friends, because I can't even see where the LAN party could possibly be set up. As I'm scanning the room I lock eyes with a guy standing by a pool table. He's your typical Charlo gangster looking dude. He's holding a pool cue. Bald. Tatted. Jacked. And staring into my soul. It's right then that I realized I'm in the wrong fucking house and I'm holding a TV. So I just turn and start to go upstairs. I hear someone go, "Hey, who was that guy?" And I feel my legs start to go numb. I press onward, make it to the front door. Try jamming my still tied shoes on when I feel a giant heavy hand on my shoulder and a deep voice goes, "Can I help you?" And I was just like, this isn't host's house, is it? And the guy was like, "Oh no, he's next door." And I was like, "Oh sorry, haha, you scared the shit out of me, man." And he cracked up and was like, "Haha, no problem. Tell host I say hi." So I go to the LAN party and tell my friend what happened. And no one believed me. The host barely believed me, even after describing his neighbor's basement. TL, doctor, looked like a burglar when I wasn't. At 18, me and my buddy heard tales of people from our school getting away with adult shit in Atlantic City. We got in the car, smoked an inordinate amount of weed on the drive while I explained to my boy how to play blackjack. We arrived late night. We parked in a shady spot behind a restaurant and walked into the Tropicana. I'm blessed with a youthful look. At 18 I must have looked 12. We sat at a table, gambled, got free rum and cokes, and won money. Cashing in the chips was the most nerve-wracking part. And we never got carded. Showed up to his mom's beach house in Avalon around 7 AM. One of the funnest nights in my life. TLDR, former housemate in college, got caught with campus master key and almost went to jail for a long time / lived as a Mexican outlaw. Sorry in advance, this is a long-winded one. So I went to a small liberal arts school in the New York / PA region. Wanted to give location context, but not give away exactly where this went down. As anyone who went to a small school knows, there's not much to do. As the degenerates we were, my friends and I had a knack for finding interesting ways to keep entertained. My friend, I'll call him Chris, was a genius. However, Chris was mostly using this genius to buy and sell drugs and do other mischievous deeds. He was never a malicious guy, mainly just a troll who sometimes smoked a bit too much weed or dabbled in peyote. Chris for a long time was trying to get a copy of the campus master key held by campus police and other campus life folks. He wanted this so he could troll professors and other staff by taking items from their offices. I know how immature this sounds. Now I should preface the story that Chris did not have any evil intentions with said keys. He didn't want a key into dorms to spy or take advantage. He literally just wanted to steal weird stuff from the college. Chris became a locksmith about halfway through the year, so he could have access to certain key making technology. However, the master key was elusive. Eventually he was talking to a campus police officer and asked to see his keys. This will be important later. He takes a picture of the key and then got to work forging the master key. It was a success and he demonstrated to us by unlocking all the doors in our house, even the ones we couldn't. Again, I want to say that Chris did not use these keys for anything horribly malicious. However, I shudder to think of what would have happened if he did, because that is an awesome amount of power for a 21-year-old troll to have. I will say that I was also not the most outstanding citizen in college. My other friend Rick and I would routinely walk around campuses raiding various fridges for food to cook up. Chris helped us with this by getting us into various teachers' lounges. The year came to a close and Chris had amassed some interesting treasures through that time. Chris graduated and I ended up leaving school along with my friend Rick. School started up the next year in the fall and Chris went to visit our friend Riley, who still went to the school, since they were roommates. When Chris went to our school he stayed with Riley. Riley goes to bed at a reasonable hour, but leaves Chris up because he has keys to every room still. Well, at this point Chris had a bit of a drinking problem and blacked out. He then wrongly assumed everyone in a sorority house would be gone partying and keyed in, only to find them all in their living room. He wanted to steal some of their awards, as that was something that happened on our campus. Greek life orgs would regularly steal each other's awards for clout. They were home and rightfully freaked out. He told them he was a resident director and he was doing rounds. They didn't believe him and he left, and they called campus police. They ended up finding him at his car through Snapchat maps and he was arrested. There was then a legal storm around Chris for a solid year. He was threatened with felonies and at least 5 years of prison time. The school wanted the full force of the law thrown at Chris. We all figured Chris was fucked because it seemed pretty open and shut that he was guilty. His dad had a plan that if Chris were to be convicted he would be given money and some guns and Chris would flee to Mexico. The legal situation cleared up when the judge found that it was the school's fault for allowing the keys to fall into anyone's hands and that Chris was not truly at fault. He ended up with community service and some fines. The chief of police at our school ended up resigning over the whole thing. It is pretty crazy to look back on now. I really can't fathom Chris living as a bandito in Mexico, but we were really close to seeing it happen. I broke my foot in 3 places, ripped a tendon, and dislocated it all at once, and had to receive 2 surgeries in order to fix the damage. I was in and out of wheelchairs, boots, crutches, all the good glorious stuff, while being on homebound from school for around 3 months. Most of the young kids who were my age at the time didn't believe me, and would pick on me about faking it, or just trying to get attention. I wasn't, and I just wanted to fit it like everyone else, and have some friends. Pretty shitty time frame of my life. I was trying to date this cute girl in 10th grade. We were both shy, and lived far away from each other within a big city. So one of her friends who I had a class with was nice enough to play matchmaker and host us at her house nearby our high school one day. When my father came to pick me up later, he was shocked to see his childhood friend from across the country open the door. They then proceeded to laugh and show the girl and I pictures of us together as babies. So, yep, that was strange. Made it awkward and I didn't date the girl, but the friend and I became best friends, so it was cool. I had a crush on this boy in grade 7 who went to a different school. I used my magic 8 ball to get a random date of when I would see him again. Will I see him in January, February, etc. Close bracket. I marked it on my calendar and forgot about it. A few months go by and I see him again on that date. Didn't realize it until later that day when I read what I had written on my calendar before. Don't think it's mystical or anything. Just a huge coincidence. My grandma concealed an affair from her family for years, and it turns out my grandfather isn't biologically my grandfather, and I'm a quarter Iranian. I, a very normal, working class person, dated the brother of an A-list celebrity in my early 20s. I also didn't know this for about 2 months because he, very understandably, didn't chat about it. I just thought his parents had a weird fascination with this particular celebrity and that's why there were photos of them scattered around the house. I'm not going to disclose who it is because he has a small media presence himself and searching his sibling can lead to him being found too. And while he was a jerk, it wouldn't be acceptable for me to just put his details out there. I helped a student escape a sort of trafficking situation. Weirdest part was that a co-worker at a part-time job and my then new boyfriend had actually met and interacted with the sleazy guy who wanted this girl as a mail order bride. Neither my co-worker nor boyfriend had any connections to each other than knowing me, and both interactions had occurred more than a year before the entire incident unfolded. I went out to an 18+ club one Thursday night, started drinking and having a good time. Saw a dude sitting in the corner along with a bottle of vodka and went over to chat. Turned out to be Mac Miller. This was in Pittsburgh in 2011, so not huge yet. Ended up hitting up an after party with him and his crew. Made it home around 7 AM. Showered and made it work by 8. Drank multiple Red Bulls to get through the day, but worth it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.